At this time, we'll move into our next portion of the agenda, and that deals with social programming that is currently, there are a number of things that are taking place, not only within our community, but beyond our community, beyond Nova Scotia, and basically throughout the Atlantic. Some of you may or may not have heard of a decision that started in Elsipogtoo in Bee Cove, known as the Simon case. Essentially, what that involved was the almost unilateral application of new guidelines dealing with social programming on our communities, where the federal government, Aboriginal Affairs, was insisting that our SDAs, the social development officers, that they apply this new policy. This basically, the dialogue and discussions around that was around 2011. What resulted from that was a fair bit of backlash from the political leadership, from the SDAs within the communities with respect to what those changes would actually mean in the communities as it relates to the delivery of social programming within our communities. At this stage, I'd like to welcome our invited guests from the Gwilimuk Gluswakan office, the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. We have Viola Robinson, who is the negotiator on behalf of the Assembly. We have Janice Maloney, who is the executive director of the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. And we have Jean Knockwood, who is a researcher, governance researcher with the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative as well. I just want to sort of outline within your packages, there is some information in the packages you will see after the education component. So, read that when you have a chance. The other thing I want to mention is that despite these ongoing sort of dialogues that are taking place in light of that case I mentioned earlier, the Simon case, and those discussions are basically undertaken between Aboriginal Affairs and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative, KMKNO, on our behalf. But in addition to that, what we felt within our community is, while those discussions are ongoing, that there was a real need for ourselves within our community to take active steps as it relates to the development of social programming within our community. Further to that, we engaged in discussions with Aboriginal Affairs to explore various areas that we can sort of move into as it relates to social programming. Some of these areas have been known as active measures, things of that nature. So we're going to talk a little bit about that later on within this discussion, and certainly open it up for discussion from the floor. So with that, I just want to hand it over to Alicia, who's going to provide some further specifics as to what we've been up to as it relates to social programming.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just would like to start out with everything that we're going to be discussing this afternoon in our portion in social is all in the booklet. If you, like PJ said, you want to take a time out to read it, I know it's lengthy. It seems like it's half the book, as Tanya just made note to me. What's not in the book, and I believe Josephine has made copies for all tables. If you haven't gotten one, we'll be glad to make you one, is the Buckingham Social Development Committee Terms of Reference. It's a draft copy. Nancy and Dolly had worked in putting this together, and if you can take the time out to read that. We've also, after this, now that this is near completion, we're near complete with this, right? This is our final?
It's draft.
Yeah. Now that this is compiled, we're going to be working on getting our committee started. So anybody out there that would like their name to be considered to be put on the committee, by all means, give one of us, anybody at the front desk, myself, Dolly, any one of the counselors, let them know, and we can start compiling a list, and we'll take it from there. We'd like to kind of get everybody from all different walks of life, right from single to the youth, you know, just of agers, elders, children, you know, family members with single children, or should I say single family parents, dual family, everything. We want everybody involved. Right now, we've been in discussion with trying to find innovative ways to run our program. As PJ had mentioned before, we kind of would like to prepare ourselves for anything that should come upon us. We want to be ready. So getting ourselves involved in active measures and programs like that to try and help prepare everybody for, you know, what may be our outcome. I hope it's not. We're doing everything we can to keep it the way it is, but run it in a way that we see fit here in the community, that will benefit you and not ANSI. We did have a study done by Dr. Fred Ween. The study was done through KMK, and these ladies here will be able to talk a little bit more about that study and exactly what these changes could mean for the community. More probably in better layman's terms than I would be able to fully give the explanation and try to explain what it means for you or I or the whole community as a whole. So with that, I guess we'll let the ladies.
Thank you very much, Alicia. The general format, because this issue could be a rather confusing issue, but basically there's three elements that I'm hoping that we would be able to sort of talk about and then provide an opportunity from the community members here to provide any questions or issues or concerns they have. But what I'm hoping is there is certainly quite a bit of background to what has taken place as it relates to social in light of the Simon case. From there, I'm hoping that we would talk about what are we doing now? What steps have we taken as a band to sort of deal with some of these changes that may be potentially coming down in the future? And then from there, getting people, to tell how those discussions with Aboriginal Affairs is going on today, and how that has been progressing and what we might be able to sort of, see in the future as it relates as a result of those discussions. So at this stage, I'm not sure who would like to begin with respect to some of these matters. Obviously, we can talk about what the band is doing, fit it in there, but I was hoping that a bit of background, maybe if somebody could sort of speak to that.
I guess that's me. I'm going to give you some background of what has taken place from 2011, when the department, ANSI, decided that the bands would have to implement the provincial manuals on the delivery of social programs. And it's not something, I don't think, that came all that sudden, but people weren't just prepared for it. But when it happened in the fall of 2011, the chiefs reacted and felt that certainly this was not something that they were prepared for, and it was not something that they were willing to do. So what we did, they talked about it, and so there was some action taken, and correspondence and notices and newsletters and letters went out to the communities, and there were some meetings being held. I think we had some meetings with just the SDAs, bringing all the SDAs in at one point or a couple of times just to brief them on what was happening and what was going on. But at that time, the ANSI had said that the bands had to implement the provincial manual delivery system, and that they would have to get their SDAs trained and learn how to make the change. And of course the chief says, no, we're not going to do that. And they did manage to get an extension of the date to April, the end of April, or the 1st of April in 2012. They said we could continue working under the same delivery system that we were working with as bands. In the meantime, there was talking about litigation, and of course litigation took place. But I'm going to talk a little bit and about the work that was going on. Is that we thought, well, one of the things that we felt, and the bands felt, the Assembly of Chiefs felt, was the fact that they were doing this without any consultation with the Mi'kmaq, without any consultation with any of the bands. And we do have a consultation process, and even though ANSI said that this was not a rights-based issue, it was a program delivery system, they didn't have to consult. We said no. We think that if there's anything that is going to, we feel that it's going to impact on the way we do things as a governing body of Mi'kmaq people, and we're asserting our rights to self-government, then of course you do have to consult. But nevertheless, it went to court. And needless to say, it went, and there was an injunction. The judge granted an injunction, and then after that the court, they went to the judicial review, and the court was heard, and the decision was in our favor. And that work there, what we were doing was we organized committees. There was a committee, a social committee, that comprised, I can't even think of all the names, but Jean probably would know exactly who was on that committee. And I personally, I told the Assembly of Chiefs, and I expressed to the committee that this was not acceptable for the chiefs of Nova Scotia, that you cannot be forced to do this. We were in a unique situation in Nova Scotia. We are at the table, main table. We're talking about the implementation of rights. And I said, and no matter what anybody says, Section 35, the one thing it does recognize as a right is the right to self-government. And it's recognized through, it was recognized through the Meech Lake Accord, and it was recognized through the Charlottetown Accord. All the provinces agreed, yes. The one thing that Section 35 includes as a right is the right to self-government. And at the main table, we're talking about the implementation of rights. We can talk about the implementation of self-governance. We already have an agreement of governance that is in education, so it's not anything new for the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. We were the first in Canada to have one of those. And I thought, now this is prime time. We're at the table. You cannot be forced into doing this. We'll go to the table and we'll negotiate a self-government agreement for the delivery of our own social delivery service. I asked the committee, and of course, chiefs passed resolutions. There were a whole number of resolutions. We have a whole number of resolutions that the Assembly of Chiefs have passed that relate to the social assistance. And there was a resolution that gave the negotiating team the mandate to go talk about self-governing structure and the self-governance implementation for our own social delivery agency. I asked the committee, I said, we have an internal committee, which is all Mi'kmaq, and with social workers on there and different representatives from our Mi'kmaq bands, and talking about the social, the problems, how we were going to address it. Then we had another committee, which we call the external committee, which involves ANSI, the others. And there's another, they're talking about something else. I asked the internal committee of Mi'kmaq people, I said, you have to sit down and design a Mi'kmaq social delivery system. What would a Mi'kmaq social delivery system look like if we were going to do it ourselves? I need you to do that for me. I don't know that. And I still need it. And this is one of the, and before I go any further, I apologize. I neglected to say in the beginning, I want to commend your band, for your chief and council, for taking the initiative to begin the work that you're doing in social. I think that's a great thing. This is the thing that needs to happen, because that feeds into a Mi'kmaq social delivery network, a Mi'kmaq social delivery system that we need in this province. And we do have the right to that. And this is the position that I take to the main table. And of course, we're getting resistance. You always get resistance when you want to make change. You always get resistance when you want to exercise your power, your jurisdiction, and take over more control. There's always resistance. It's hard, it's difficult to move the federal government away from the status quo, the way they have been doing things. And we know the way that they have been doing things has not been a good way, and it has not been a way that benefits our people, because we have not had a say on how these things happen. Times have changed. We're in an era now where we can deliver from an eco-centric view, which is our view, which is a holistic view, and leave that Eurocentric out there for the rest of Canada. But I think in Nova Scotia, I always say, we are taking the lead on many things, many, many things. And this is one of them that we need to do. It will take a little time. It will take a lot of work. It will take a lot of patience. But do you know what? We can't stop. It doesn't matter. We've been here for a long, long, long time, and for far too long, programs have been implemented and have been, I'll use the word, forced on us. And that's no longer acceptable. That's no longer acceptable. We as Mi'kmaq people know and understand and know how to deal with our own people. And we do have we can take that responsibility and we can move forward and do exactly just that. And this is all a part of the Assembly of Nova Scotia Chiefs, where that's a governing system, again, that doesn't exist anywhere else, and they are doing things. It's a formation of a governing system that one day will grow into a real governing structure that will be a people structure, and that we will be able to work as a nation and move up from there. And we are taking those steps ever so slowly, it's just a tiny little step at a time that we move forward. But it doesn't matter to me because we've been here for a long time and we're going to be here for a long time to come. And we are in no hurry. I don't believe, as a person, myself, in time restrictions. They have this thing, we've got an hour, by this time next year, or they work on this linear thing, we're here and our goal, and here it is over here. We got to be there for that time. I say, okay, all right, that's fine. If that's what makes you happy, that's great. But in my mind, that is not our system. We are in a holistic system, and we can take all the time we want, because whatever we do, we have to do it right, and we cannot be forced. And the thing that they will use to really try to reinforce what they're saying, and is, of course, funding and money. And that's what they did when they came, in 2011, when they went to the bands first with saying we had to implement the policy. They said, you have until such and such a time, by the end of this year or whatever, or you're not going to get you're not going to get your funding. We'll withhold your funding. And that's what they have. That's all they have, is that funding. But as we move into self-governing and self-governing arrangements and self-governing dialogue and discussions, then funding, it will be a matter, but it will happen. And so I think that where we are today, and the one thing is the federal government did appeal that decision, by the way, and I don't know what the date of the next court date is. I'm not sure, I don't know. But the factums have been, we just got ours. Naomi just sent hers out just a few minutes ago, and they will be going to court. So this gives us a chance to argue points. There was, I think that, the decision itself when it came down the last time, and we don't speak on a decision too much itself, because Naomi Metallic is the litigator. She's the one that's representing the chiefs. So anything to deal with the decision, and if you really want to know what's happening, what's going on, you should invite her to come and speak. She would be more than happy, I'm sure, to come, because she's the one that speaks to those. But the appeal will give us a chance to argue special points. And I guess in some of the testimony, for example, Barbara Robinson, I think her name is, her testimony, I think she made a little bit of an impact during that court trial. So we get a chance to discredit that part of the testimony. And some of the things that, that came out of that is that they have the duty now to consult under Section 35. And and they're talking about the mirror approach, and that's using the provincial guidelines. But if you do that, there's a possibility that it could work with very careful, cautious approach. But that's up for the people to decide. not me, but it's up to the people like yourselves to look and see if that's possible, or is there another way? But certainly, I think that we just have to wait now and see what happens in this appeal, what kind of a decision we'll get. Hopefully, it'll be in our favor. If it is, it strengthens our case for our own self-government delivery system for the Mi'kmaq.
I just want to add into that, just to follow up what Viola said as it relates to the Simon case. And essentially what that case was about was the chiefs within the Atlantic who challenged the decision of the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs, to implement and to get the bands throughout the Atlantic to implement the new guidelines, social guidelines, back in 2011. Essentially, that decision was challenged through what they call a judicial review. And a decision came down, the latest decision came down on November 4th, which essentially said that government was not permitted to do that. It wasn't appropriate for government to force the bands to implement these new social policy guidelines without first talking to, Aboriginal communities, to Mi'kmaq communities about what those impacts will be, and to really take, those impacts into consideration. Essentially, what the judge found in that case was, even though, there was some preliminary work done through Aboriginal Affairs indicating that there were specific risks associated with implementing that new policy, and those risks essentially related to bands. In other words, members who are accessing, social programming dollars would be getting less, and in some cases, substantially less. And so it's no surprise that when the chiefs became knowledgeable of this, Viola mentioned there were a number of resolutions, a number of position papers, studies, but essentially when that was challenged, we were successful. But the thing I want to just sort of stress is the fight isn't over yet. As Viola mentioned, although we succeeded in the federal court, Aboriginal Affairs is appealing the decision. From the correspondence, it appears that appeal will be heard in the fall of this year, or possibly early next year. In terms of arguments, I believe they will be near the fall to the end of this year. I believe from there, a decision sometime maybe in early of 2015. So just to let you know that we're not out of the woods yet, so to say, in the sense that government is still challenging the ruling of the federal court, and they're, quite pretty insistent upon having ourselves adopt their provincial social guidelines. Now, some of you might be wondering about, well, what does this actually mean? You might be saying, well, how does this translate if we were to apply or adopt provincial social guidelines? How would that impact us? How would that impact you? Those of you who are accessing, social program dollars. And, there were a number of committed and quite gifted individuals that took on the task of doing the necessary research, to running the figures and, finding that out. And I'd like to just maybe ask Jean Knockwood to talk a little bit about how things vary from the way things exist now what people get in terms of social programming now, and how potentially things may change if, for example, we are forced to adopt provincial social guidelines. So there was a report done that was indicated earlier by Viola, and I was just hoping maybe Jean could talk a bit about some of those differences that exist. Sorry? Could you, 5 minutes? 5 to 10. She's wondering how much time she has.
5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to try really quickly. I have to tell you that this report was done by Dr. Fred Ween. It came from a resolution that was passed by the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs on December 14, 2011. This policy came into effect in August of 2011, so it wasn't too long after that policy was to be implemented. Dr. Ween, who did this study, I have to tell you that it's very detailed, but I'm going to do a quick overview. A part of the reason why we wanted Dr. Ween to do this study is that we wanted to find out what was the difference between the Mi'kmaq communities and non-Aboriginal communities. In particular, we wanted to look at the areas of the demographics and the social, economic, culture, and services. We wanted to clarify how the social programs on reserve were different from off reserve. We wanted to estimate the financial impacts of the proposal. And then we also wanted to look at the best practices of the present SDAs. The methodology he used was he reviewed all supporting documentation. He used the 2006 census information and the First Nations Regional Health Survey for the demographics. He interviewed the SDAs, if there was 2 or 3 SDAs in the community, interviewed the senior SDA. They created a form that they used to extract information from people's files. However, the names of the individuals were kept confidential. That form looked at housing cost, heating cost, electrical cost, appliance costs, health conditions, economic development costs, and demographics. I'm going rather quick because he told me 5 to 10 minutes. This is not a 5 to 10 minute conversation, but I'll do this as quickly as possible. The impact, what we got out of the study was that there were several impacts, and the impact for basic social assistance for householders, although the provincial rate's a bit higher, but transportation drops out of the formula and becomes a special need. Household allocation, this $51 supplement every 2 weeks is not provided by the province. Basic assistance for boarders, provincial rates are comparable. Child benefits, provided in 9 out of the 13 communities, the $56 to $84 that you get every 2 weeks for your children will not be provided under the provincial formula. Special needs, comparable on some items, but much lower for household appliances and related. It's lower for people who are diabetic, ceiling rather set amount. In other words, there's going to be a bit of a challenge when it comes to special needs. Shelter cost. Major impact here as provincial providers provide a single shelter allowance. So what that means, you know how the First Nations bands provide 100% for lights and 100% for fuel, and in some cases 100% for the cost of the central mortgage and housing mortgages. Under the provincial guidelines, the total amount of money you'll receive, I think it's $600 to pay all those costs. Related cost, the province provides a much wider range of programs to the clients and required further research. What we found was the province cut back on a lot of their social programs. What they did is they had other programs that they encouraged people to apply for that was not a part of social. And in First Nations communities, we do not have those programs available. So therefore, when the provincial guidelines come into effect, the budgets of individuals will be cut severely. You'd have to declare your income. That means any new kind of income will need to be declared, such as child support, alimony, any other family members. All of this will reduce your check. Retention of income. Provincial rules are retaining income while working seems comparable. Youth eligibility. What happens is in First Nations community, when you turn 18, you're eligible to receive welfare. Well, according to the province, you won't be able to be eligible to receive social assistance until you're 19. Senior eligibility. In some cases, senior citizens' lights and heats are being paid for. This will be totally cut out. Instead of your checks being provided every 2 weeks, they'll be provided once a month. And there'll be more monitoring. And that's one of the things we found in the research, was that the monitoring that was done by SDAs was much more culturally appropriate. What that means is that in a lot of cases they didn't pry into your personal affairs, whereas the provincial government will require much more detailed information, much more personal information will have to be divulged. Things like, I don't know what they call, we call it the Christmas bonus at Indian Brook. Other people call it the treaty monies. All of that becomes deductible off your, it's seen as an income, so it becomes deductible off your check. Those are all the items that we found that would have a large impact. And as I said, this is Dr. Ween's study, and I spoke to him yesterday because I said I was coming here, and he said that for the Chief and Council of Button Cake, that he's more than interested to come in September to go into more details of this study. I only have 5 to 10 minutes, I understand that. But I also want to mention one other thing to you before I close off, is that this particular file, this social file, has been very serious to the chiefs, to the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs. And since August, I think it was the 28th that we met, SCA, yeah. You over there? Anyways, at that time, since that time, the chiefs have passed 9 resolutions, each and every time putting down on paper their feelings towards this policy and how it may affect their individual community members. So they have passed many resolutions preventing the implementation of this. They have been involved in the court case, and they have done a lot of work on this particular file.
Thank you very much, Jean. And I'm hoping that we entertain questions soon, but I just want to finish off in terms of the updates, both from an internal perspective, because what Viola and Jean have provided details on, Viola gave some great detail on the background of the case, where things are going. Jean provided excellent detail on what are the actual impacts if somehow we were forced to apply those provincial guidelines within this community. So in light of that, you'll see within your package a letter dated March 5th, that is May 5th of this year. It's addressed to the Associate Regional Director, Dougal McDonald. And essentially, what we were having to discuss as a council was, what do we do? What do we do in light of the existing landscape that is going on? So as you just heard, there is a case. that the Simon case, that we were successful in stopping the federal government through Aboriginal Affairs in applying provincial rates. You heard from Jean what those changes would be, and a lot of that would be will have significant impact within our communities. And so the federal government appealed that decision. We're probably going to hear the results of that in early of 2015. And so as a council, we get to think, well, how do we position ourselves in light of what's going on? So one of the immediate challenges and things we discussed was we needed to separate, what we wanted to do within the band from what is going on with the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative process and Aboriginal Affairs. So currently, ongoing discussions are taking place between Aboriginal Affairs and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative on our behalf, but on many other bands' behalf within Nova Scotia. The nature of those discussions is to talk about the impacts that the Simon case and the application of provincial social policy in First Nation communities will have. So while those discussions are ongoing, what we decided was we needed to take steps now. We needed to take steps in terms of finding out what was available for us, what's available for our community, to start thinking innovatively as it relates to social programming within our community. So the thing I want to stress, and what is outlined within the letter, is our initiative that we're undertaking as Bakunke is completely separate and distinct from what is going on through Aboriginal Affairs and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. That's a separate initiative. It deals with Simon, and as a band, we didn't want to hamper or affect any of that whatsoever. Rather, what we wanted to do was to start having discussions with the department on how we can sort of look at our current operation of social development within our community and sort of come up with new and innovative ways to start thinking about delivering social programming within the community. So this letter of May 5th sort of kicked off that process. What that led to was a further meeting between ourselves and the Regional Director General. I believe her name is Janine Dunlop. We had that meeting in Amherst at Aboriginal Affairs. And basically the purpose, social was a big part of that meeting. And one of the things we wanted to do was to start looking at existing possibilities on how we can run our social programming. What are the options and opportunities that we have as a band to undertake social programming? What are the flexibilities, things of that nature? And so we're starting to come up with a plan. Krista and later Tara have came up with this really ingenious concept. It's a really good idea where we're getting together our social development officer, our Native Employment Officer, our Economic Development Officer, our Tanya in Education, and Juliana in Health. And we developed a committee. And this committee has the terms of reference, but the whole idea there is when we start looking at social, we're just not going to look at it from a social program perspective. What we're going to look at it is from an integrated perspective, from all those various areas, from Native employment, economic development, health, education, and social. So social won't just be left there all by itself to try to do things. We're going to work together and to see what we can do. What you'll see on your tables is a draft terms of reference for a social committee. What we're also looking forward to is a number of committed and dedicated individuals that want to sit on a committee, a social committee, to help us discuss what are some of the real sort of issues that exist within our community with people who are on social, right? And we really want to try to get a really good idea on what are your needs, what can we do to sort of get more people into, the employment situation. We're also exploring possibilities with Aboriginal Affairs, looking at their sort of exceptions or flexibilities outside of Simon and those discussions, right? That always had existed before, this concept called special measures. What is special measures and how can we sort of take advantage of that and do what is best for our community? So, for example, we sort of discussed the possibilities of, having employment initiatives, maybe with certain employers within Antigonish, employers that, can provide the possibility of really good jobs, in the sense maybe people working at St. FX or the hospital or a number of other areas. If transportation is an issue, can we do something as a council to provide transportation to individuals within the community to sort of, have that opportunity to work and to do things like that? Now, these are only possibilities. These are only ideas that have been flowing around, but the whole idea of it is to start working together, networking within the band amongst various departments, but also, when we look to develop a social committee, is to have the input from community members themselves, because you know what's best, right, in order to help you and the things you need to do in order to seek gainful employment. So the whole idea here is, as a council, we just don't want to sit back and see what happens, right? We want to start moving now. We want to start doing things differently and innovatively now, rather than waiting and sees what happens in the future. Because we don't know what the future is going to bring. We don't know if the federal government is going to be successful in their appeal. We don't know what is going to be the outcome of these discussions between Aboriginal Affairs and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiatives. So, with all these uncertainties, the only thing that we can really be certain about ourselves is taking control and setting our own agenda and doing what we think is right for our community members. So, with that, I'm just looking to council if they want to add anything further in that regard. Check it.
One of the things we're really hoping I'm just going to refer back to something that Viola would have mentioned, where we've been looking at some research as far as social policy throughout the Atlantic, and probably even Canada, trying to identify what kind of social policies First Nations communities are abiding by. Here in the Atlantic, we're using the First Nations manual, social manual, if I'm correct. Anyway, the purpose of setting up or being proactive, I guess, in social is looking at, looking first probably at the programs and services through the existing manual, our manual, the manual we use, and seeing how at the present time they're servicing us. Is it something that could be more adaptable? So the purpose of setting up a committee, I guess, is to start analyzing things like that. And also thinking, like PJ would have mentioned, more innovatively, we're creating our own policy, being more proactive and being more prepared for waiting for whatever it is going to be at the end of the line as to what the Department of Indian Affairs is going to decide for us. I just believe it's so much better if we can grab the reins now and just harness what it is that we see fit for ourselves. It just makes us that much more ready. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, we really don't know we certainly know what the impacts will be as far as the department going ahead and getting the bands to implement the provincial guidelines. It's going to be devastating, and we all know that. And that's certainly something or a path we don't want to go, but certainly want to be prepared for and develop our own and be proactive in our own ways.
So as we mentioned, like we'll be looking to learn more from community members. The development of a committee, a social committee, would be a really good thing to really start the dialogue. And once we sort of get more ideas on where we need to go and what we need to consider, we can take those ideas and we can approach Aboriginal affairs within our negotiations. So, for example, we are currently in a one-year, what they call non-block agreement, where essentially our social programming, our social dollars that we are spending is reimbursed 100%. And provided it's in compliance, it's within policy guidelines. So that's where we're at. But, you know, what we're looking to do is when we get, you know, the insight and the ideas that, you know, we don't have the answers, you know, we're looking to generate those ideas and answers. But once we have a firm idea, then we can take that when we approach government within our next round of negotiations. And so maybe that next round of negotiations might mean that we enter into a block agreement specific just on social potentially, where, you know, certain figures, social development dollars that we're expending today, you know, this year, you know, it gives an idea to government where we are. So if we lock that in on, let's say, a block agreement, a 5-year agreement, then, you know, within that block arrangement, it gives us flexibility in terms of how we can use those social dollars. So these are some of the things we're thinking in terms of approaching the future, things like that. I'm just, did you want to add any further comments, Alicia, before we put any questions to the floor? Okay. So right now, we'll just sort of, anybody that has any questions or things like that, I'm always glad to see Cheyenne there. So.
Okay, this has nothing to do with the policy in effect, but does our current social programs have a set income for each program, and does it filter through it, such as recreation? Where does our recreation funding come from? Does it come from Nova Scotia? The gaming, is it allotted into the budget already?
Okay, that's a good question. As far as I know, as it relates to youth programming, there is a certain component that is provided, that is cost shared between the province and ourselves for a particular position at the health center. His name being Richie Connors.
Yes,
you know?
we know Richie Connors.
So the province gives half, we contribute half.
That's just for his job. Richie's here to make a physical activity strategy plan, right?
Yeah.
Right. I'm asking about the programs for the youth, like right now, I have plenty of parents and friends that have put their receipts in and never got reimbursed. And all this time it has been a well-known fact that you did it, right? People depended on it. That's okay. Then you have your welfare parents that can't even afford to pay it in full. So where is the funding from recreation going? How is it affecting them? Because clearly they're not getting any of it.
That's good points. What operated in the past, I mean, for those that would pay half, was the band would cover half. I mean, they would cover the other half on a case-by-case basis.
So
when-
where were you getting the other half from? Where were you getting it from? Gaming, from the casino, from
Yeah.
the band? Like, but don't you have you don't have a set budget that says recreation so much a year.
We do now. We set a budget for youth activities, and this was communicated in various other forums as well, that the budget we allocated, and we have a budget this year, yay, is $50,000 for youth activities. Now, this is the thing, is that we need a couple of things in order to administer that budget. We need a youth committee developed to help make the decisions related to that, and sort of like a recreation policy, to help.
Yes, I've been asking, remember?
Yeah, so that would be great. A committee and a policy would be the two things that we would be looking for to administer that budget item. So there are funds there. We have, for example, utilized those funds in a recent initiative where I believe some students were going to NAG, the tattoo. Mike is just telling me about what that's all about there earlier. So that's the kind of thing we're looking to do with that. But we're also looking to enhance youth sort of recreation activities, not only through that budgetary item, but from making that a priority as it relates to fundraising initiatives within the community.
So are you saying that you'll be allocating so much per kid per year? So is there a cap or no cap?
Well, that's a question for the committee, and that's a question for whatever policy that committee develops. Okay? This is the thing, the council doesn't want to get into the business of saying who gets what, when, and why. What we want to sort of get into is...
But you are our leaders. You should be doing that, right?
Sorry?
You're the leader. You guys should be doing this, I would say. Like, honestly, when I think of social, I think of health and well-being in a community, right?
Yeah.
Our kids are being left out now because why? The band is not paying the 50%. The parents can't pay 100%. I'm lucky. My kid's older now, but you guys never paid for their tuition to go to Taekwondo or anything. But a lot of other kids around here have been denied that. So really, you are putting a cap on them. I'm saying that we all should, if you are so proactive in our community, we need to help our kids get better. I would say this is the best way to do it, is by putting a cap or putting it out there on paper that your kid is entitled $500 a year, something like that. Where instead, you have people that are on welfare and their kids can't go in it, right? And then you have working parents that have 3 or 4 things on the go because they can afford to wait for that reimbursement. Now that reimbursement is cut off. Where is that? Why is it cut off?
Well, this is the thing. It's hard to manage something on a case-by-case basis when requests come in every now and then. It's not organized, it's not planned, you can't budget for that. The whole idea of a budget is to get certainty on how we operate our financial affairs. That's the number one priority right now, is managing our financial affairs. And so what allows us to do that, as it relates to youth activities, and I believe this is the first time this was ever done, is a budget was set. We committed as leadership to set a budget of $50,000 for youth activities. Now, that's good, but the thing is that we need a body, a group of committed individuals to say, this is where those funds should be expended. They should go here, here, and here, and here, and here, right?
Right.
And that group makes that determination and says, this is our budget of your budget, and this is how we want those funds allocated. That's the kind of stuff we need, right? Because we don't want to get into the situation of, just giving out funds here and there on a request basis, right?
Okay, so with this new policy in effect coming in, will it affect recreation for the children again in the community? Will we have to readjust it, or will they have to do 50%? Because right now, they're not getting nothing, right?
I wouldn't say nobody's getting nothing. I mean, like.
Did they get their fees paid this year? No.
Sorry, I'm having a hard.
Has any of the students that are in sports got their fees paid by the band? No.
No.
Okay. Is that going to keep on continuing like this, or how are we going to fix this?
I'm just going back to you, okay?
Yeah, no, I know.
I'm going back to what we did is we set a budget.
Yeah.
So we need people to help administer that budget, okay? So I know it's a new thing, but that's what we're looking to do. We did it in housing, okay? We're going to do it in social, and we're going to do that with youth as well.
Okay, just one more thing then. Since we're not paying anything of the children's fees there, where is that money going at right now?
Well, it's in the own source revenue. I mean, there's no budgetary item for youth activities, you know?
So you don't have a budget that you get from INAC saying how much is for tobacco, gaming, education, anything like that?
Well, I'm looking around. Can anyone tell me what's available from Aboriginal Affairs for youth activities?
There isn't any.
There's no budget.
Okay.
There's no amount allocated.
None.
Okay.
Not in the casino monies, not in the monies you get from Nova Scotia.
Well, Nova Scotia, we mentioned the earlier thing about Ritchie, right?
Yeah, I know. I'm the one that set that up. Me and Juliana, we knew about that. I'm talking about other sources of income for our children now.
I'm looking around and I'm seeing no.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Something we should work on.
I mean, and you know, I appreciate all these suggestions and questions, and you know, if anybody else, I mean, like, it was really good to have that sort of discussion related to youth activities. I'm wondering if anybody has something to add as it relates to social as well, you know, because these are rather interesting things we're talking about as it relates to how social is changing in light of not only the court case, but the ongoing discussions that are taking place. So we're open to any comments or suggestions, or Alicia, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on social and its budget. It pretty much is what it is. It's never going to be enough. And obviously with the provincial changes, it's going to drop even lower than what we get now. Which is why we're really concerned about this, and it's really important for us to try and take the measures that we're taking through KMKNO and with what we're doing internally. I don't have any money in my program to shove towards any recreation or anything. I struggle hard enough as it is trying to help the graduates every year and students going away to school every year on top of, you know, our special needs budget, which is limited monthly, and reports being due monthly. It's an even harder task to try and stay within that budget. And like, I hope everybody realizes that, you know, like, I'm not being the big B word when I try to say, you know, like, can you wait, or, you know, is it like that really important that you get this like right now? It's not that I'm trying to be stingy, it's trying to work within my budget, which, as I said, is very small and very limited. And with the study in the provincial system, could possibly be even lower. So I just, it's really important that everybody understand that. That's all.
I have a quick question. I don't know how to. There we go. In regards to social, I know Cape Breton has a lot of changes in social, and it sounds like they're kind of similar changes of what might happen here. And you're saying that we have an opportunity to negotiate and to change that maybe. But what can we do that they didn't do? Because apparently they lost. They are limited now, and it's changed for them. And we're not there yet, but what can we do to stop that from happening to us or making it less dramatic?
So, Kathleen, you mentioned that some bands in Cape Breton were, and I believe you're a member to, for example, they essentially took steps to adopt sort of a similar system, I guess, where their social programming would be comparable, I think, to a certain extent with the provincial sort of regime. You know, for them, I think they initiated a process to at least within the context of Member 2. And I think the program they undertook was the STAIRS program. It was something that they planned for, and eventually they implemented that program, and through the process of it all, you know, they will be one of the few bands within the Atlantic that wouldn't be affected by these changes coming down through, you know, the provincial.
But wouldn't their high employment rate contribute to them being less affected by it too? They have a 90% employment rate maybe. Most of them are employed, so this social change won't affect a huge part of their community. But here, where we don't have a high employment rate, and we have a lot of people who are on social, it's do or die. And like, what can we? You were saying that there's something we can do. But what can we do?
Okay.
And what can we do that it might work? Because it didn't work for them.
Okay. No, I mean, and what you're getting at is what can we do? You know, and I think there's certain things we can do. Obviously, one of the things I found out through our discussions with Joe Bahar, who is the guy that deals with social on behalf of Aboriginal Affairs, is when we look at our clients, the people that are on social, there's quite a people there that have attained certain education levels, you know, whether they be grade 12 or even beyond that as it relates to college or university sort of education levels. So that's something quite unique to our community, is the education level of people who are on social. Certainly, one of the things that I believe needs to be done, and I know Juliana knows quite a bit about this too, is to find out, you know, more from people who are on social as well, in terms of what are their direct needs. You know, what are the things that are really blocking them from getting employment? What are the things that we can do as a band, as a community, to bring down those barriers, to provide resources to them, to make the prospect of employment to seem all that more like an opportunity? So it's more or less trying to really find out what those needs are. Because as we know, the federal government, Aboriginal Affairs, it's a numbers game. You know, they're looking at the numbers and they're looking to cut down the numbers, right? So this is an opportunity for us to start integrating amongst ourselves, to working together amongst ourselves as a band, as departments, to try to figure out, okay, how can we best sort of, you know, provide these opportunities. For some people, it might just be that one opportunity to get their foot in the door. If we can help do that, then that's great. You know, there's an opportunity. For others, it might be an issue of gaining more self-confidence and self-esteem in terms of being able to go to that interview, and being able to just, be comfortable within the interview setting. So the needs may vary, but the more and more we find out from community members, the more and more we can come up with these innovative ways of trying to get people off of social and into getting in to get that employment that they're looking for. I mean, as a council, as a chief, I'm looking to start, creating those linkages with those potential employers, whether, it is dealing with Port Hawkesbury Pulp and Paper, or whether it deals with St. FX University, or the hospital. We're not talking about jobs where, we're talking about good jobs, the prospect of having, providing those opportunities to our own members, and to try to provide those resources to them that they would have. And, a lot of the things that sort of prevent that from happening, let's just face it, is some of the existing things that are not permitted through the current social policy, and that's not good enough for us. So we're looking to sort of create exceptions to the rules to really find out what are the existing needs of our community members, and leadership to be committed to look into that and do what we can to help them.
We used to be followed by the 7 districts. We learned this in the BA program. We learned the history and all of the changes that have come. But I believe that as advocates, we can help all of the chiefs. The chiefs can't do it on their own. And one of our philosopher teachers, Mr. Bryson, had told us that we are the advocates, the community, the people. And I bet you if all 13 districts of reserves go to the governance place in Halifax, and we all did a protest, we would win in social. And I really believe it relies on our education system. As we talked before about the education, our kids are failing in education, they have no jobs now, and we're so dependent on social. And I believe as a whole of 13 reserves, we can do it. And the only way we're going to do it is protest. We have to be the advocates for ourselves, the Mi'kmaq people, not just one individual home, one individual family. It's all of us that can do it. And it's not going to be just the chiefs that can change things. It's the whole Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Cape Breton. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions?
Is there any decision, any time frame where, the final court case is supposed to come?
Okay. Emery was asking, is there any final time frame for the court case? And we mentioned earlier that, we were successful on November 4th with the federal court in the Simon case. Aboriginal Affairs decided to appeal that case. So potentially arguments will be made. I think Viola mentioned that Naomi's brief was filed today. So that's ongoing. And so those arguments are probably going to be heard in the fall. A decision, maybe 2 or 3 months, potentially, from that. So maybe early 2015. Who knows what the Federal Court of Appeal is going to decide in that regard. We only know, but that's not the end of it. After the Court of Appeal judgment, it would be up to the party that wasn't successful to appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada, which is the final determination on the matter. It's the highest court in the country. So the timeline it's hard to predict. There are no guarantees that the Supreme Court of Canada will hear this case. You have to apply to the Supreme Court of Canada to even get your case heard, kind of thing. So we really don't have the certainties on the timelines, the firm timelines on what will take place with with this particular case. One of the things that I'm hoping is maybe I could get somebody to talk about what is taking place now with those dialogues with Aboriginal Affairs and the Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative. If somebody could.
We together as a negotiation team have just this past week sat down with Aboriginal Affairs to talk about some next steps. We know with respect to the case that was decided just recently, they talked a lot about procedural fairness. Procedural fairness really is when they're making a decision that's going to affect you personally, and that decision, if it will affect you as a group or personally, they should have asked you, they should have talked to you, they should have got some input from you, and then made the decision. They knew, and I say they, INAC knew there would be impacts if they changed the social system to look like the provincial system. So we know that. And Jean just highlighted a report that was done from Jean just highlighted a report that was done from Dr. Fred Ween, which said, you know what, those impacts are going to be huge. That's going to be a huge component. So we are going back to, and I'm going to go back to procedural fairness. Now that the court said, okay, INAC, you didn't do your procedural fairness component, they're waiting now, they've appealed, they're going to try very hard to get that part in. They're going to try very hard to what we call consult, what they're going to call right now is the procedural fairness, to talk to everybody, to see what they can do, how they can implement what their mandate is. Their mandate is very clear, to implement the provincial rules on reserve. So they're going to try to figure that out. So part of our discussion is a couple of different folds. Your lead negotiator, Viola Robinson, is sitting at the negotiation table to say, guys, you know what? We heard very clearly from the communities and the chiefs that we need to take ownership and control of the delivery of social programs on reserve. And that's your self-government component of it. So we are sitting at the negotiation table to talk about that. On a level down, we're sitting down with INAC saying, okay, well, what can we do next? We don't know what the court says, what the court is going to come up with at the end of the day, so we need to have plan A, plan B, and plan C in place. Right now, our discussions with them is to develop an MOU, or terms of reference, whatever you want to call it, that we will be very, very clear on what we're talking about and how it's going to impact our system. Because if we're not clear on what we're talking about, the research we're doing, INAC is going to take that and say in court and in other places, we've talked to the Mi'kmaq, we know what they want, and this is what we're going to do. So the discussions at that level at the table is to put protections in place so we can talk to them freely and try to build the different systems that we need to. The other level that we'll be working on is definitely with the frontline workers in each of your communities, to see what works in each of the communities. We'll recognize each community is different. What works in one may not work in another. So we need to essentially shut up and listen. Sit down and come to meetings like this and listen to say, what works for you guys? How do we build a system that works in every single community, but works as a whole? Because, you know, you heard one speaker say, and absolutely correct, the Mi'kmaq Nation, the Mi'kmaq communities in Nova Scotia are stronger together. So we need to put all those pieces of the puzzle together. So the discussions with INAC clearly is looking at protecting us, even though we have a court case that said they didn't do their procedural fairness. Okay, so if they're going to try to do their procedural fairness, let's protect ourselves and make sure that we have our voice heard that's nice and strong. but they cannot take it and use it against us, especially when we're trying to weed through it. All different levels. So at the main table, definitely at the assembly table, definitely within the communities and with the frontline workers. So I have to say, really appreciate and thank you, Chief and Council, for giving us this opportunity today to listen to your discussions, because every voice and every opinion matters in cases like this. Every single comment is so important, because this is things that impact us. It impacts our family, our everyday lives. And if we don't work at it together, I don't want to say, we're not very, I want to say poop out of luck, but you know, it is truly a trial that we'll have to do together. So thank you, Chief and Council, for the opportunity, and community members as well.
Thank you.
Okay, there was a comment at our table, and when I talked about protesting, why should we have to protest was what was said to me. And the way it was explained to me, and I'm going to just, they want me to express it, is we've been following the government and their dictations on paper forever. When does it stop? When can we take control of our children? Because they're not government children, and they're not Department of Indian Affairs children. So what can we do as a community, probably other communities, to try and prevent what's being dictated to us on a time-to-time basis? And I think that's the whole question, because when I said protesting, and I figured if you had 5,000 Indians up in Halifax, that would be a great protest. But the question come to me is, when do we stop following dictation from government? When do we stand on our feet? And it's not going to just take Buck and Cake, because we are unique in our way, Buck and Cake, but we do need all the other communities to follow or become a part of the whole. And like my mother said, we've been shoved into residential schools. We've been dictated to. We don't live in cages no more. So when does it stop? And when do we start having a voice for what we want out of social, education, whatever we want? And that's the main question. What can we do to prevent all of this dictation? Because it's never stopped in the past, and we got to make it for 2014. We have to make a change for our children, not the government children. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you all for that. That was amazing. I mean, somebody showed me a figure. We have 51 participants who came out and joined us for this community session. And we all know there are others that are in our community, and you know, we can start sharing what we heard from meetings like this. It's recorded, so it'll be up on the website. So if somebody says I wasn't there, you know, they can check out the videotapes and that. But, you know, that is a sad fact, but it's a reality that we have been dictated to for so many years. As, you know, the elder Jesse mentioned about residential schools and, you know, what we have gone through as a people, as a nation. And, you know, what happens is you have this wave of change that happens where people say enough is enough, that now is the time that we start taking matters into our own hands. Now is the time that we take active steps and make those decisions for the well-being of our children, because there are future leaders, you know. So, you know, in summary or in brief, and to answer that, is it starts now. It starts today. And every person that walks away from this meeting is going to talk to another person, you know, and information is going to be shared, and discussions are going to happen. And this isn't the last community meeting by far. You know, we're only just beginning, you know, and the issues that are going to come forward, there's going to be many other issues. The next community meeting is going to be focused on own source revenue. I mean, but all we can do is discuss these issues. We can educate each other. We can find out what people think about these issues, and we can try to make those right decisions. I'm not going to say we're going to make the right decisions all the time, but at least we're going to try to take the time to find out what are the real concerns that exist within our communities. So I really like to thank Stephanie for providing those comments, and others around her for providing them, because it's very important that we no longer accept the status quo. We no longer are just reacting to government. You know, we have to sort of take control of things. We have to be the change that we wish to see in the world. Somebody once said that, and I think, you know, that's where we're going. That's where we're starting. You know, it's going to be a ways to go, but we're at least beginning that. And I just want to thank you for mentioning that.
I just want to share a concern, especially with these changes. One, probably the most detrimental that I see, and it's, you know, it's hard enough right now with the social delivery as it exists now. Parents, single parents, everyone's struggling just to put food on a table and have heat and shelter. With these changes that INAC is trying to shove down our throats, that being the provincial guidelines, what really fears me is, because when I did some research on it, I noticed that in, you know, the case came where I think it was supposed to be implemented 2011. But what ended up happening was probably in about 29, the Mi'kmaq Family Children's Services budget tripled. When I seen that triple, that told me that the government anticipated a huge apprehension level. Because with these changes taking place with INAC, I mean, if we thought our families are struggling now, and with these changes coming on, we're going to lose our children. And that's probably the most devastating thing anyone could ever imagine. And yeah, enough is enough, for sure. And I think some of the proactive things is we got to start doing things for ourselves now, and these are some of the issues that we're looking at as far as developing our own policy, developing our own way, and really fighting tooth and nail to make sure that our kids are number one, our families are number one. And it's just keeping that strong in mind, because it is going to be something that we can't tolerate, I guess, bottom line.
One of the results of the studies, one of the findings that we found was that the review, as it said here, that we did, indicates that if there isn't a way of improving, and if we go with the federal government's new guidelines to go by the province, is that the social and mental health of the communities will start to fall. And the biggest issue that becomes apparent at the very beginning, and there was some discussion on this, was that the suicide rate will increase. We know that for a fact. And that's what our findings have indicated.
Juliana?
I'm really glad to see you ladies here today. I'm hoping that this will be the beginning of dialogue more in the community, and more the community. I know we have 51 people here, and I think that's great, but I also think that we need to reach out to some people who may not look at community meetings as the only avenue to be able to kind of express their opinions or to get the information that they need to get. So I think that that's one thing. The other thing I'm really worried about a lot is with regards to housing. So I don't know how many people look at housing when they think of social, but it is a huge impact if you start employing community members and then having the expectations that they're going to have to start paying, you know what I mean, rent and whatnot. And I know that people are discouraged as it is now to do that when their only avenue for housing is accessing rental units. So for me, I think that those are some of the things that I would like to kind of have as highlights. And while I don't dismiss that welfare, child welfare and other things are things, housing I think plays a big role on your ability to be in the community and maintain your, you know what I mean, maintain your status in the community and being able to be part of it. So I hope that, much like what PJ said, is that people will start spreading the word that it's more important for them more now than ever to get more involved in coming to these community meetings and finding out this information, especially with regards to the social changes. So that's just, I just wanted to say that.
Okay. Did you want to say something? Okay. Well, we're at 2:20, so maybe we'll take a break until 2:30. And I just want to add that we have door prizes, so please don't leave us. We'll finish off with this session with our third component, which talks about the highway development, the twinning project. So we'll convene at 2:30.